Hello! It is I, Merlinstergandaldore, here with another episode of Mage's Musings. Today, another Reviewcap. It's the Old School Essentials campaign and the Keep on the Borderlands. Previously, a brand new campaign started, and 6 adventurers came together at the Keep on the Borderlands. Following a lead by a tradesman, they hunted down 2 giant, pony-sized weasels and brought the furs back to the tradesman, who gave them a hefty sum for the pelts. The group met up again, sadly missing one player. Stephen, who previously played the halfling Gilbert, couldn't make the scheduled session, so Gilbert sat out for this round. Before starting, the DM announced he would be introducing another house rule, this time regarding two-handed weapons, where by the book, two-handed and slow weapons automatically lose initiative in combat. The DM has adjusted it so that such weapons gain the initiative against advancing opponents, allowing a strike as they approach, after which, engaged in melee, they lose the initiative by default as per the OSE rules. Also, I would like to make a quick correction. In the last Reviewcap, I mentioned that Ferris Oxarms was a neutral fighter. This was incorrect, as he is in fact a lawful fighter. Once again, the minis used at the table are from the Order of the Stick Monster for Every Season line. The group for this round is Neil, playing Nikolai Muerto, lawful magic user. Nathaniel, playing Lothar Undertree, a neutral halfling. George, playing Ferris Oxarms, a lawful fighter. Dean, playing Pyrrhus, a neutral magic user, and Marcel, playing Legolost, chaotic elf. The campaign picks up 2 weeks after the Weasel Hunt. During this time, Legolost has heard murmurs of expeditions to the cave, and that no one has ever returned. This is a result of hearing random rumors on the rumor chart. No other players score any rumors on this go-around. Nikolai has not been idle. He has spent one of these weeks studying Anno's spellbook to learn the magic missile spell and adding it to his own book. During that time, Legolost had been inquiring about finding the necessary components to research some magic of his own. But since the cost was exorbitant and his chance to successfully learn dubious, he decided to stick with the previous plan of just having Nikolai teach him the magic missile. Nikolai does insist that Legolost donate a sum of 500 gold pieces to the Church of Foltus in exchange for this training, as it would be significantly less than if he spent the time doing personal research. Legolost turns it back on him, saying that if he donates that much, that Nikolai should at least donate a sum as well, insisting that Nikolai give 50 gold pieces. Nikolai heartily agrees to this, and the pair take the hefty donation to the church. The reactions are extreme, with the curate rolling a 10 +2 reaction due to extreme generosity, but -1 for Legolost's charisma, for a net +1 against a 5 and a 4 on the dice. The curate profusely thanks Legolost for his generosity. Dean, who ran Anno in the prior session, introduces his new character, and as such the group makes the acquaintance of a new friend who wishes to join them on their adventures. An apprentice, neutral magic user called Pyrrhus. He seeks knowledge in magic and is eager to trade with Legolost and Nikolai, though is embarrassed by the spell he was forced to learn by his mentor and keeps it secret for now. Ferris uses the time to recruit more retainers. The DM rolls against the 50% chance of D4 +1 mercenaries available at any given time, indicating another 2 are available. He meets with Oscar and Felicity. Both reactions to his offer are very high. 11 is scored in both cases, +1 for charisma, scoring a total of 12, granting +1 to their loyalty base. He equips Oscar with plate mail, shield, and weapons. He equips Felicity with leather armor, longbow, and short sword. Ferris is approached by Merritt, the keep scribe, who acts as census taker and tax collector. He is informed that due to the 8,000 royals he received from Reese the tradesman, he is required to pay an excise fee of 10%. Because the contract was in his name, he's on the hook for the bill. Since the money has already been split amongst his fellows, he realizes he'll need to get them to pony up their share lest he be legally required to meet the entire amount. He takes his new retainers and immediately approaches Legolas, the one he fears will be least likely to pay his share. And Ferris's guess proves correct, as the chaotic Legolas asserts that any excise fee is not his concern. But to keep the peace, he'll pony up 200 gold of the 400 gold he needs to pay for his share. Ferris doesn't accept this, and tension mounts between the two. Ferris's new associates are ready to rumble too. Whether or not Legolas realizes he's outclassed or not never comes up, but he does indicate that he's willing to pay 333 gold towards the excise fee to keep the peace. Ferris decides the fight is not worth it and agrees to this, paying the rest out of his own pocket. The other members of the party offer no resistance, and the excise fee is transferred to the keep treasury, and the tax debt is lifted. At the tavern, a trio of adventurers, a dwarf and 2 humans, taunt Nikolai and Lothar about their mighty task of hunting weasels, not clued in to the idea that they were giant weasels. They continuously mock them, but let slip that they are seeking a place called Quesqueton. Though, as the dwarf lets the name slip, his human friends shush him. Nikolai fetches Ferris, who talks to them. Ferris's conversation goes a little better, but ultimately they give no more information about their intended destination and show no interest in working with the group. After a reaction roll of 5, 6 with charisma, they insist that the area is big enough for everyone and they should just stay out of each other's way. The dwarf tells Ferris to look for someone called Clifton at the guildhouse, as he's seeking muscle. Pyrrhus is approached by a man named Roos, who praises him for his bravery in coming to this place to make his mark. He disparages the keep forces for cowardice, because they just sit around and wait for mercenaries to do all the real work. Roos takes a shine to Pyrrhus, and offers him the blessing of Auril should he and his companions venture out to the caves. As well, he offers a tidbit of knowledge that the humanoids occupying the caves are always infighting, and that they have thinned their own numbers, making for easy pickings for the right group. Pyrrhus then hires a young link boy as a retainer. The lad is 12, but an offered 15 gold pieces secures the kid's services. The team assembles to discuss new money-making options. Nikolai talks of the magic user Bargle and the reward for him, but also of a standing bounty on bandit and humanoid scalps. 10 royals each can add up quite quickly. Pyrrhus pushes for a trip to these famous caves he keeps hearing about. The others react to the presence of the link boy servant and aren't sure about having someone so young with them. The boy, Hilmfred, protests that he's nearly a man and just as hearty as any of them, even at one point putting up his dukes to fight Ferris if he calls him a kid again. Upon hearing that Ferris heard a tip about someone at the guildhouse offering a job, they proceed to inquire. They are met by a snooty guard, as the guildhouse is meant for nobles and the merchant class, and is far more posh than the Traveller's Inn. The guard fetches Clifton Caldwell, a well-to-do merchant, who is eager to tell his tale to the adventurers. He recently purchased a small castle, some half a day from here, at the midpoint between the keep and the nearest town down the river, called Kleiner. When he attempted to move into his new home, he found it was overrun. Goblins and wolves chased him and his people out. He sheltered here at the keep, where he felt he could find mercenaries to clean it out. After being offered 50 royals each, plus 100% of the spoils they find within, the group thinks on it. A good charisma roll prompts a raise to 75 per head, which the group decides to accept. The group asks what Caldwell knows about the creatures inside, but all he saw were goblins and wolves. Nikolai asks Caldwell if he knows anything of the history of the keep. Caldwell tells him of a noble who built the castle a generation past called Count Lorenk, but that's all he knows. The team prepares for the trek, with rations and equipment. Ferris seeks to buy a mule, but none are currently available for sale at the keep. Sleeping overnight, they set out in the morning. The DM checks for wilderness encounters, but there are none. For this region, he uses a D10 4 times daily, with an encounter appearing on a 1. The group arrives 100 yards from Caldwell's castle based on directions they received. At the castle, they track the area looking for signs of activity, with Lothar finding evidence of goblins and wolves. Nikolai suggests that perhaps they continue on to the town of Kleiner, as perhaps they might find information on the castle's history that could help them. There is some discussion, as half are in favor of this, while the others would prefer to assault the castle straight away. After a brief back and forth, it is decided to press on to Kleiner to see if any information can be gleaned so they aren't going in completely blind. The group arrives in Kleiner without incident and makes their way to the Melodious Harpy, the local inn. Taking advantage of a brief moment of silence caused by the entrance of such a motley group, Ferris bellows out, calling to see if anyone knows anything about the castle half a day away. The barman motions them over, introducing himself as Bauer, the mayor of Kleiner, as well as the owner of this establishment. Bauer explains that he knows nothing about the castle they referenced, but has a problem he'd like looked into if they are for hire. Nikolai protests that their services are already under contract, but Ferris suggests that they aren't violating their arrangement by hearing him out. A rare negative reaction for Ferris has Bauer disliking him and preferring to talk to Nikolai. Bauer relates to Nikolai that their shrine to Elona has been raided by goblins who have been pestering the town. Many passing merchants have been robbed here and there, which is bad enough, but the latest raid on the shrine cost them the scepter their priest uses in religious rituals to bless the crop. It's important that this item be recovered. Bauer offers them 50 royals apiece if they'd assault the goblins' hideaway, a stronghold known as Raven's Ruin. Raven was an adventurer and burglar who created a stronghold as a base. He disappeared many years ago, and his stronghold was well hidden. Well, until recently, that is. The goblins are using it as a staging area. Bauer warns that the goblins are more organized than he thought goblins could be. The group debates this. They are committed to Caldwell's task, but there's no timeline on it, and it's just one wealthy man. Here is a whole community in trouble. Nikolai and Ferris decide that they won't be in violation of their current contract if they help these people. Pyrrhus and Legolas also suggest that the scalps of the dead goblins will fetch the bounty at the keep just the same. The group agrees and takes the job to assault Raven's Ruin. Bauer stresses that the scepter is of prime importance, but if they can recover the stolen merchant supplies, that would also be a boon. Any other treasures in Raven's Ruin are of no interest to Kleiner, just what is theirs. The group manages to buy a mule and are led to Raven's Ruin by a guide. From there, they force the way into the complex. They light a torch, to be carried by the now nervous link boy Helmfrid, and find themselves in the entry hall. A locked door with a "Do Not Enter" sign prompts a few listen checks. But they decide to leave it and descend stairs deeper into the complex. Nikolai unwisely takes point down a narrow corridor. Unknown to them, waiting on a hidden ledge above the corridor are 5 goblins, ready with an ambush. The dungeon master calls for a surprise check. Neil, Nikolai's player, rolls for the group, scoring a 3. Alas, the goblins' chance at surprising in this specific instance is 1 to 3 on a d6, meaning they get a round of action. With screams, the 5 goblins drop nets down on the surprise group. Net attacks against Nikolai, Ferris, Oscar, and Legolas all miss, but Pyrrhus finds himself snagged. Surprise over, Legolas and Nikolai declare casting their magic missiles. Initiative is rolled, but the group loses. 1 goblin scrambles down a ladder at the south end of the ledge, but the others hang-drop to get in behind the group to prevent retreat. The dungeon master rules that, given the height, a hang-drop has a 50% chance of causing some minor damage. 2 of the 4 goblins sustain D2 damage from the drop, but engage in battle. Felicity the Retainer is killed immediately in the first round. Another goblin gets a hit on Lothar, reducing him to 2 hit points. 1 goblin gets a shot on Legolas, disrupting his spell and injuring him. The goblin coming for Nikolai runs out of movement rate and stops just out of melee range. On the player's turn, Nikolai's spell fires and the goblin takes 1d6 plus 1, but Nikolai rolls a 1 for a total of 2 damage, not enough to kill the goblin menacing him. Pyrrhus asks if he can stab through the net at the goblin next to him instead of trying to break free. The dungeon master rules yes, but at penalty. Pyrrhus' strength is 4, so he's already at -2, but decides to try anyway. He misses. Poorly. Legolas' spell disrupted, he draws his sword for the next round. Ferris finds himself hemmed into a narrow corridor, unable to engage properly. He asks the DM if he can strike around the corner at a goblin he can see on the diagonal on the grid. The DM rules yes, but the goblin has a bonus to AC. Ferris makes the strike but misses. Oscar pushes past Nikolai, who is not engaged in melee, so the DM rules that his square may be passed through by a friendly. He scores a hit, killing the goblin Nikolai had already wounded. Even little Helmfrid attempts to stab with a dagger Pyrrhus had provided him. Legolas makes a point of announcing he's protecting the little link boy. the fight continues with another initiative loss for the team. Things are looking grim as Lothar takes a fatal blow and falls dead. Legolas manages to evade 3 attacks directed his way, but realizing he's being overwhelmed, asks about using Helmfrid the Link Boy as a human shield. But he's thwarted by circumstance, so he instead attacks, and misses. Pyrrhus continues to try to stab from his net, to no avail. Another obstructed attack from Ferris likewise proves fruitless. George, Ferris's player, moves the NPC Oscar down the hall to the ladder and starts climbing to the goblin's perch. In the next round, the tide turns, as Oscar climbs the ladder and chucks a spear from above, killing one of the goblins. Ferris now has an opening to move into the fray and fights side by side with Legolas. 2 more goblins fall to the onslaught. In the final round, the last goblin fails his morale, realizing that he's the last one standing, but initiative goes to the group, and they cut him down before he can retreat. With the immediate threat dealt with, loyalty is rolled by the DM. While Oscar's morale holds, Helmfrid's nerve breaks and the Link Boy flees from the complex with the torch he was carrying. The group surveys their losses while recovering from the battle. They have a discussion of their next move. Nikolai and Legolas are out of spells. Legolas is also gravely injured. They are down 2 members, and this was just the first encounter. Ferris and Nikolai vote to push forward, as the townsfolk are depending on them. The rest of the group agrees, so they form up to delve further into Raven's Ruin. The session is called there, with a plan to resume in a few weeks. Even though this group is based in the keep on the Borderlands, all the options from the actual module were ignored in favor of other plot hooks. Such is the nature of a sandbox. Roos, the name the DM has given to the priest from the keep roster, has had his first appearance, making contact with Pyrrhus, so time will tell what story fruits that encounter yields. The appearance of Clifton Caldwell was one of the many hooks the Dungeon Master had ready from module B9, Castle Caldwell and beyond. The DM has run this one a few times over the years, and it definitely serves as a great low-level adventure for new groups. Unexpectedly, however, the group decided in the moment that they would be bypassing Caldwell Castle and going to Kleiner to gather information, which of course led to a new mission entirely. The Dungeon Master had set up Kleiner and the module Assault on Raven's Ruin as a possibility, but legitimately didn't expect them to ignore their chosen mission and go that route. The Dungeon Master certainly could have simply not introduced the plot hook for Raven's Ruin, but where's the fun in that? It's the player's game. Let them choose. And they did. Well, since Assault on Raven's Ruin unexpectedly jumped into the spotlight, let's review the book so far. This is the Dungeon Master's second time running this scenario. It's an okay starter module. The usual basic module startup and plot hooks are in effect. A town in trouble, someone in authority offers a sum, and is willing to up the sum with negotiation, and then the players are off to adventure. There's the usual boxed text to feed to players. The Dungeon Master here doesn't use things like that, which is fair enough, as they are usually meant for younger and less experienced DMs. This is mostly an older group, save for one teenaged player, so the basic level startups for plots are usually played differently, with more roleplay and interaction. Also, with no assumption that the players would accept the mission just because it's what's in front of them. The complex is well laid out, though I do have some concerns about it from a dungeon crawl perspective, which I will get into when the scenario is complete, so as not to spoil anything for the players. The goblin ambush at the start is a tough one. Even though the goblins missed on their net attacks against all but one character, it was a very tense battle. The Dungeon Master realized after the fact that he'd screwed up the net attacks. They were supposed to be strictly saving throw rolls and not attack rolls, but in the end it worked out, as only one character was netted and didn't end up in danger from it. Still, this is but the first encounter, and the group's resources are already drained. I hope they elect to play smart going forward. The ambush initiated by the goblins aside, combat is not the only solution here. I won't say more, as that's where the session ended, but the next session will pick up right where they left off. It's possible they'll complete the entire scenario, allowing for a full review of the entire book. OSE continues to impress, with all players fully engaged and having an absolute blast. I plan to do a full video review of Old School Essentials in an upcoming video, so please stay tuned for that one. The DM, a veteran of advanced Dungeons & Dragons, is immensely pleased with the smooth and quick play of Old School Essentials, which seems to be securing a place as his favorite system, second only to AD&D. The response from the players also continues to be positive. The player who is brand new to role-playing games has no frame of reference, so he's just getting used to RPG-style games, though he is fit right in. The young player at 16 has only ever played 5th edition before, so this is a new experience on many levels for him. It shall be interesting to see if we have an old-school convert in one so young. Fun stuff indeed! Watching the fight play out was intense. The players were on the edges of their seats as the dice proved to be fickle. But that is the game at its best! Stay tuned for my next review cap. The specific group reconvenes in a few weeks, and I'll have that video up as soon as possible. In the interim, however, a different group is starting the exciting campaign scenario, Night Below. That group is running Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition, so we shall see what comes. Until then, my friends, may your adventures be glorious. I shall see you anon.